The darkness fell across the land where once beautiful spring flowers bloomed. All that remained were dead vegetation. Even the colors of the leaves hadn't changed among the many other strange happenings on this unusual March 20th. Every year it's been the same: the equinox, the moment in time and space when the sun positions directly above the Earth's equator, usually bringing warmth and light back to the northern hemisphere. However, this year was different. In the small town of Goose Bay, Oregon, population 586 something wasn't right. It didn't feel like spring had arrived at all. In fact, it felt like something evil was in the air. Terrence Trilby, a stocky, thin brown teenager with a quiet manner and very few friends, picked on and bullied by his fellow classmates for his beliefs on plants and our survival. However, also by chance he happens to also be head of the science club of the local high school Marchmont at only 16. He, as his father before him, were determined to create a device to communicate with plants and animals, and eventually to use this knowledge to help our ecosystem. Secretly, Terrence did not believe it really could ever work. His father would tell him it needed to work, son, and told him all he had to do was believe. The kids of Marchmont High School should have been enjoying their spring break, but instead of enjoyment and fun, instead of an announcement of how wonderful the weather is or some other great event or news, the televisions greeted everyone with an ominous message stating to stay indoors until further notice. I looked out my windows but saw no one for miles, and that's where this story really begins, as Terrence was working on his science project all night, as a workaholic tends to do, to please his late father, to finish and develop a machine to actually create a voice for plants, animals, maybe even add a voice to things we consider inanimate objects. Terrence is determined to make their voices heard if that's possible, or just his father's wild imagination, not because of some inner desire, but to finish what he had promised his father to do to help this world. Terrence looked out his window, dark gray overcast clouds. And what caught his eyes next bewildered the young scientist. Whole yards, plants dead as far as he could see. As he tried process what was possibly going on, with the lack of news or TV giving out any information. And that's when it happened. Terrence heard a voice. The voice sounded frantic and scared, calling Terrence's name several times until finally Terrence screamed back frantically, "Where are you?" Then as he looked down on the floor he became woozy. A small plant green the size of a quarter was actually talking. Terrence, in shock and awe, immediately stated, "How high must I be?" And the plant responded, "You realize, when you smoke and eat us, and my friends, you absorb our consciousness. And we need you, Terrence." Terrence ran out the door. "I must be having a flashback, or something," he exclaimed. Terrence never believed his father's vision would ever work, but his work believed in him apparently, and Terrence was in for a lot more than he could possibly imagine. Against the television warnings, Terrence had to get to the science lab and determine why everything was dying. He jumped on his 10 speed and headed as fast as he could to the lab. Another voice, "We need your help." Terrence, frightened, he crashed his bike into a tree. The tree, looking gray, began to speak in a huge monotone voice. "You have been giving the ability to hear us, Lord Terrence, as the ancients did," he went on. "I am Tiberian, the oldest living tree in this region." Terrence spoke in a scared, panicked voice. "I only did this as a joke. I only used my dad's old project. It was a family tradition for high school, just for credit in a class, so the kids would think I was cool. I never knew, I never thought it could ever work." "There is a reason you were chosen," the tree continued. "We are all dying, everything. You are the only human that can communicate with the darkness and the light to prove we can live together, and if I can't," Terrence interrupted, "all life will be destroyed, and we will start over." The gray old tree continues. "No one wants to see our earth abused and destroyed. Especially not God." Terrence asks in a harsh tone, "What am I supposed to do? Talk to God? Use my multi-voicing box to somehow explain why people deserve a second chance, not to abuse and destroy the land and kill animals for sport, kill people in wars, eat far beyond their means, taking more food than they could possibly need? Why people are so greedy? I don't know the answers. I don't know what to do. And I'm talking to a tree. I've lost my mind," he continued. "I don't want you all to be treated this way, as a commodity. I want fair treatment for animals. I don't want the world to end like this and people and plants to suffer. I was wrong to take it as a joke. I'll fight for you." And then a voice louder than the heavens opened up and said, "If there was but one of you." And I awoke in my chair, staring at the earpiece for the plant talking device I created. I looked out my window and saw the sun shining on the trees. It must have been a dream. Dream or not, I will fight to conserve you the wildlife, and wood creatures, dream or not. Terence shouted, and a voice was heard from above, echoing calmly over the world, thank you. To this day, no one can explain where the voices came from. But Terence says he knows, and he has kept his promise and fought for many years against globalization, even stopping more than 500 acres from being destroyed just this year. His devices, though never used in anyone's public presence, were discovered many years after Terence's death and were confiscated by men in suits never to be seen or heard from again.